When I see this, it doesn't make me concerned that homeschooling is on the rise, like all the reports say. It makes me concerned that the school system is actually failing our children. The numbers don't lie. There has been a huge rise in the number of families deciding to homeschool their children, not just here in Australia, but all around the world. There are so many reasons why families are choosing to ditch the traditional school system in favour of educating their children at home. So let's have a look at a few of them. Reason number one is bullying. Now, this is something that the majority of us has had to deal with at some point in our school experience, and it leaves some pretty deep and lasting scars. For children being bullied, it can completely change their attitude towards school, and it severely impacts their ability to learn. A brain that's in distress and constantly on edge, it can't learn. That child is actually in survival mode. And this can lead to emotional distress, trauma, and honestly, flat out school refusal. Children don't want to go to school if that's the situation that they're going to be faced with. And honestly, can you blame them? Parents in this situation have been left with no other choice but to pull their children out of school and find some other way of educating them outside of the traditional school system. And honestly, we really need to move away from the idea that being bullied makes a child stronger. We don't accept that behaviour as adults, so why do we see it as okay for children to put up with that kind of behaviour? And if we change the age of the person experiencing this bullying, it changes the language that we use when we address that kind of behaviour. For a child and children, we call it bullying. But as adults, we call it abuse and harassment. Why would we want that for our children? Reason number two is neurodiversity. There is a very big problem facing schools right now when it comes to children who are neurodiverse or children who have some form of learning problem or some other form of disability. Whether that's dyslexia or dysgraphia or autism spectrum disorder or ADHD or ODD or some other form of developmental delay, etc. These are the problems that are facing the schools in how to approach teaching these children. And quite frankly, in general, the school system doesn't know what to do or how to accommodate these very unique learners. I've heard horror stories about what school was like for some of these students and for the parents who actively tried to work with the school to address their concerns. And they were told, essentially, if your child can't conform to the system, there's the door. I say it all the time, but the school system really is a cookie factory. Unless you fit the mould, then you're thrown in the scrap heap. And let's just be fair to teachers for a moment. The average classroom size in Australia at the moment is roughly between 25 and 30 students. That is a lot of students that you have to teach. And according to the Australian Bureau of Statistics, 1 in 6 Australians have some form of disability. That means if a teacher has a classroom filled with 30 students, then at least 5 of those students could have some form of disability. And these disabilities could range greatly and, they could require a unique approach, each of them, when it comes to the way the teacher teaches the child. And not to mention that he also has all of the other students in the class that they still need to help. Do you see where this could feel overwhelming for the teacher? Reason number 3 is the child is not progressing in their learning. And every child has moments in their learning where they pause for a little bit longer than at other times, but that's nothing to be alarmed about. But if your child is plateauing, for an extended period of time, or they start to avoid doing schoolwork and lessons that they previously enjoyed, then that might be a sign of a bigger problem. This could be for a number of reasons, including the ones that we just mentioned. It could also be big life events. Maybe a grandparent has recently passed away, or shifting friendships with the kids in their class, or it could be a lack of confidence in broaching a new topic that they're being taught. It could be not understanding what they're being taught itself. You know, they might have missed a small step in the previous lessons and now they're stuck and they're just feeling overwhelmed. Or, you know, it could be that the teacher this year just wasn't the right fit for them. You know, I liken getting a new teacher every year to buying a lottery ticket. You know, sometimes you strike gold and win big, and you get a teacher that really works for you, and you make a lot of progress in that year. And other times you crash and burn, and you get a teacher that is absolutely the wrong fit for you, and they don't tweak their teaching methods to match your learning style, and you're feeling so lost, and you spend the entire year feeling like you're just trying to keep up with your peers. I mean, does this sound familiar to anyone? Number 4 is the teaching approach. And I know that this one sounds really familiar to the point I just made before, but something that we all got to experience during the COVID lockdowns was online learning with our children. And this opened our eyes to a few things. You know, what exactly was being taught to our child, how it was being taught to our child, how it connected or didn't connect with other things that they were learning, and how the teacher actually taught our child. This kind of took the wool off a lot of our eyes because it made us question whether the approach to teaching was the best fit for our child and if what they were learning was actually relevant to them. For a lot of parents, they actually realized that their child was getting more out of and learning more from their family experiments, their conversations, and expanding their interests in different ways, and that they were learning so much more through that versus the online learning and the official schoolwork that was being sent to them. Many of us thought we could do a better job because we know our child better than the teacher does and better than the school system does. And if your child is struggling to fit the mold at school, that can be really challenging, not only for the child, but for us as parents as well. You know, every year I see another news report about the rise of homeschooling across the country and why that might be the case. These reports are usually presented by extremely concerned journalists who are genuinely shocked by the rise in homeschooling, and they think it's a horrible thing and they're motivated to create the same sort of response in their viewers. So needless to say, this doesn't paint homeschooling in quite a positive light, and I think there's a huge disparity between the mainstream system and how it's viewed and the home education community. The school system is held up on this pedestal as the standard of education, and any criticism of it creates a lot of backlash. But I think that any system that can't stand up to criticism and scrutiny, that has major problems. In Queensland, from 2018 to 2022, for primary age students, homeschooling registrations jumped by over 100%. And in the same time frame, for secondary students, the registrations jumped by over 200%. And that's all within 4 years. When I see this, it doesn't make me concerned that homeschooling is on the rise, like the news reports tend to say. I see it as evidence that the school system is actually failing our children. Let me know what you think, and if you'd like to see more, check out this video and don't forget to like and subscribe.